Have you ever been to an orphanage? If you haven't, you should consider it, because it changed my life forever. As I stepped out of the van into the dusty red dirt in Mokopane, South Africa, to teach children English and give them their only meal for the day, the children stood back hesitantly, wondering if we were safe. As I looked into their eyes, I saw pain and fear that probably came from years of seeing things children should never see. I held the orphans, trying to convey the message that they were loved, even though there was a language barrier that prevented me from speaking it. Ever since that day, I have wanted to adopt internationally and be able to help the children out who are overseas. Being surrounded by friends who are adopted, families, and volunteering at orphanages in Africa have helped me firsthand see what it takes to adopt. It has also made me curious about adoption and wanting to adopt internationally. The information I have learned has educated me for the future if I ever want to adopt, and can also help anyone here who is considering adoption, wanting to understand the people they know who have been adopted, or understanding the people who are adopting. I hope that through this information you can become more aware of the benefits of adopting internationally, the hardships, and the effects adopting internationally has on both the parents and the family. Let's take a look at the disadvantages of adoption. The disadvantages of adopting internationally include racism, traveling to another country, language and medical barriers, and it's harder for the kids to adapt. One disadvantage is if you adopt a child who is not of the same race, it could cause problems within the family and in your culture. According to Christina Frank, the author of many magazines about parenting and adoption, many people want a child who looks like they blend in with the family to avoid racism and many questions. Louise Schneer, Director of International Adoptions in New York City, relays, I've seen prospective parents decide not to adopt transnationally, racially, because the extended families didn't approve. Louise also describes the importance of having and accepting and support of important people in your family as a must. The child must be loved and embraced for who she is, or he. Another disadvantage is the traveling cost to another culture. This includes the high cost of plane ticket, immersing yourself in the culture, and living there for a while until you get the kids. A 2005 survey by adoptive families found that domestic adoption costs less than $20,000, whereas international adoption can cost up to $25,000 or more. You also have to take off work at any given moment to go pick up the child. Some adoption agencies want both parents to sign the papers, which gives rise to higher plane tickets and costs as well. Ademic, the writer of The Idiot's Guide to Adoption, says they may have to stay in that culture for a while as well. There's also a language and medical record barrier. Frank says the norm of many orphanages overseas has children with malnutrition, parasites, diseases, and developmental delays. However, Jane Orenson, a pediatrician specializing in international adopted children, explains that of the 50 to 75% of children that arrive with developmental delays, 10 to 15% are still struggling after the age of 3. It's also hard for many kids to adapt. Many kids come not with a clean background. For example, Picker and Schuster, authors of an article from Time magazine, talks about a girl named Kataya of age 5 who was adopted, and their parents thought she'd come with a clean slate. However, she came and they learned that her mom was a prostitute, and so she had seen many things a child should never see. Even though there are many disadvantages to adoption, many of the advantages outweigh them all. The advantages of adoption are learning about another culture, it's easier to get closed adoption, more options to find a child, and offers protection to the child from world's dangers. The first advantage of adopting internationally is that it is eye-opening to the family, and they get to learn about a new culture and ethnicity. The Child Welfare Information Gateway says adopting a child from another race or culture forces parents to examine their own lifestyle and community and to view them through the eyes of their child. Some parents even seek adoption from their original heritage to help them better learn about their own heritage, says Christina Frank. All these ways are good for a family to join together and learn about a new culture or the culture that you're from. Another advantage is that it's easier to get a closed adoption. Frank also tells us of one woman, Christina White, who is a publicist and writer in Weymouth, who adopted their 4-year-old from China because many children there are given anonymously at birth, so she didn't have to worry about the birth mother asking for the child back. Another advantage is that it offers protection from the child from world dangers. Whitney A. Raatz, Senator Mary Lauderer's policy advisor on international welfare, said that over the course of the program in Guatemala, 27,000 children who had little to no chance of decent life came to live with a loving American family. 95% of Russian children who grow up in the orphanages end up in the streets, unable to function, are very likely to die shortly after the 18th birthday, says Pickard and Schuster, authors of an article from Time magazine. This is another example where children have a new chance at life. After considering both the advantages and disadvantages, it is also good to realize there are effects on the family after the adoption process has taken place. One after effect can be post-adoption depression disorder, or PADS. Waiting for your adopted child to come home can be a long process, and after months of anticipating the arrival of your child, it can be a letdown when the adoption actually takes place, says the Child Welfare Information Gateway. It's hard for a parent to be so excited, and then when they finally get their child, if they don't have the excitement that they thought they would have, the parent can be let down and given post-adoption depression syndrome. It's also difficulty attaching to a child. After adoption, it may take some time to bond with the child, and many parents may not realize that and worry that they don't love their child. Another effect is parents have a hard time adjusting to a new identity. After waiting so long to finally be a mother and father, it might be hard to start adjusting to your new life of parenting. Many parents don't know what to expect after receiving their new identity as a parent. Although there is effects that may be harmful, a new family member that you have been waiting for, who you can love, cherish, and adore, is a great after effect for many people. I've seen so many families who go through the effects, but it brings them closer together, and the joy of their new child is worth it all. Take the Densmores, for an example. They adopted a child from Ethiopia. I know they had so many time waiting, trying to get the child, and many hard times. But through it all, they became a loving family, and I know they would do it all over again if they had to for their son Tegan. Another example is Graham Sharp. He adopted his child, and it took 3 times. He first had an adoption that failed and another adoption that failed, and they were going to give up. But they are so glad they didn't, because they have a son now, and they are adjusting to life perfectly. In conclusion, you can see that adoption may have many disadvantages and effects, but the benefits can be so great that it outweighs them all. Whether the good outweighs the bad is up to each couple to decide when they are adopting. It is helpful to look at the benefits, the disadvantages, and the effects afterward when considering international adoption. Whether you yourself are personally considering adoption or someone you know, make sure to consider if international adoption is a right choice.